Henry Ford dropped out of business school, but with nothing more than a machinist's intuition and a farmer's persistence, he created the company that defined the 20th century. At 12, while other farm kids milked cows, Ford was repairing neighbors' machinery with tools he had forged himself. By 30, he had built his first successful automobile in a rented shed, working by candlelight after 12-hour factory shifts. By 50, he controlled the largest manufacturing operation on Earth, producing a car every 24 seconds. And at 75, after his son's tragic death nearly destroyed him, he established a foundation that would revolutionize education and scientific research for generations. This is the remarkable story of relentless experimentation, bitter corporate battles, and an unshakable belief that machines could liberate humanity from drudgery. America at the turn of the century was a nation physically trapped by its own transportation limitations. For the average American, the world extended about as far as their feet could carry them. While we romanticize horse-drawn carriages today, the reality was far from picturesque. A decent carriage cost the equivalent of 6 months' wages for the average worker, and that was before you purchased the horse, an animal that required constant feeding, stabling, and care. For the vast majority of Americans, private transportation remained firmly out of reach. Instead, they walked miles to work, to church, to visit family, or relied on overcrowded, unreliable public transportation that served only urban centers. The wealthy elite, meanwhile, experienced a radically different America. Their carriages, ornate and custom-built, were status symbols first and vehicles second. With teams of servants to maintain their transportation, the rich moved freely through a landscape that remained largely inaccessible to everyone else. When automobiles first appeared on American roads in the 1890s, they seemed to entrench this divide even further. Early automobiles were handcrafted luxury items built one painstaking piece at a time by master craftsmen. Each car required weeks of skilled labor, with components individually fitted and adjusted. The resulting vehicles cost more than the average family home and broke down with such frequency that owners employed dedicated chauffeur mechanics. This division reflected a deeper truth about manufacturing at the time. Every complex product, from furniture to watches, was built through individual craftsmanship. A skilled worker would handle a single item from beginning to end, taking personal responsibility for its quality, but limiting how many could be produced. Mass ownership of sophisticated goods was simply impossible under this system. For the industrial workers who formed America's backbone, this reality created a cruel paradox. They built the nation's products but could never hope to afford them. Factory jobs paid subsistence wages with no benefits, often trapping entire families in cycles of poverty. 12-hour shifts, 6 or 7 days a week, left workers physically broken while providing barely enough to survive, let alone purchase the luxury goods they helped create. This was the accepted order of things, the natural hierarchy that most business leaders and social thinkers assumed was permanent. But one man looked at this divided America and saw something entirely different. Young Henry Ford, raised on a Michigan farm but drawn to the mechanical marvels of the industrial age, rejected the notion that quality and affordability were mutually exclusive. Where others saw automobiles as playthings for the privileged, Ford envisioned them as tools of liberation that could and should belong to everyone. This fundamental challenge to the established order would ultimately transform not just an industry, but the very fabric of American society. What set Henry Ford apart from the industrialists of his era was not just technical genius, though he possessed that in abundance. It was his fundamentally different vision of what manufacturing could achieve. While his contemporaries measured success by the exclusivity of their products, Ford became obsessed with a different metric: accessibility through speed and simplification. This revolutionary perspective was shaped by Ford's childhood on a Dearborn, Michigan farm. Born in 1863, young Henry quickly developed a reputation as the boy who could fix anything. His father, William Ford, considered his son's mechanical inclinations a distraction from proper farm work. But for Henry, machinery represented freedom rather than an obligation. The necessity of repairing broken equipment with whatever materials were at hand taught him an invaluable lesson. Elegant solutions often emerged from constraints, not abundance. By age 15, Ford had constructed his first steam engine from scrap metal. When he dismantled and reassembled neighbors' watches, he was not just satisfying curiosity, he was developing a philosophy. Every mechanical problem, he discovered, could be broken down into simpler components. Every design could be refined to eliminate unnecessary complexity, and every production process could be accelerated if properly organized. This mindset placed Ford at odds with conventional manufacturing wisdom, which prized craftsmanship and individuality. When he left the farm at 16 to apprentice as a machinist in Detroit, Ford was shocked by the inefficiency he witnessed. Workers spent hours filing parts to fit together, when standardized components could eliminate the need entirely. Teams of skilled craftsmen labored on single products, when dividing tasks might multiply output. Ford's first automotive ventures revealed both his mechanical brilliance and his commercial naivete. The Detroit Automobile Company, founded in 1899, failed within a year because Ford insisted on perfecting his designs rather than producing sellable vehicles. The Henry Ford Company similarly collapsed when investors lost patience with his constant tinkering and refinement. These early failures taught Ford that technical excellence meant nothing without production efficiency. While other manufacturers boasted of their cars' handcrafted details and luxurious appointments, Ford increasingly focused on a single question: how could automobiles be made faster, simpler, and cheaper without sacrificing reliability? This approach fundamentally challenged every assumption about manufacturing. The prevailing wisdom held that quality products required skilled craftsmen working meticulously on individual units. Ford proposed something radical: that quality could be designed into standardized parts, assembled by ordinary workers following precise routines. His vision was not just about making cars, it was about democratizing technology, making it accessible to the very people who built it. Ford believed that if you could make something simple enough, fast enough, and cheap enough, you would not just find a market, you would create one where none existed before. Ford's early business failures could have ended his automotive ambitions. Instead, he made a strategic pivot that would change everything. He became a race car driver. In an era when automobile races drew crowds of thousands, Ford understood that victory on the track would prove his engineering prowess better than any advertisement. On October 10, 1901, Ford shocked the automotive world by defeating Alexander Winton, America's most prominent race car driver, in a 10-lap race at the Detroit Driving Club. Driving Sweepstakes, a car he had designed and built himself, Ford was not just winning a race. He was showcasing a fundamentally different approach to automotive design. Where Winton's vehicle was elegant and complex, Ford's was ruthlessly practical, lighter, simpler, and ultimately faster. The victory removed every doubt about Ford's engineering capabilities. More importantly, it attracted the financial backing he desperately needed. Coal dealer Alexander Malcolmson partnered with Ford to launch the Ford Motor Company in June 1903, providing $28,000 in capital, equivalent to over $800,000 today. For the first time, Ford had the resources to test his theories about mass production at scale. Between 1903 and 1908, Ford and his team worked through multiple models, from the sophisticated Model K to the simpler Model N. Each iteration taught valuable lessons about what worked in production and what customers truly valued. Ford observed that buyers cared far more about reliability and affordability than luxury features, reinforcing his conviction that the market for practical automobiles was vastly larger than the elite clientele other manufacturers targeted. This process culminated in the Model T, unveiled in October 1908. The car represented the solution to Ford's fundamental equation, creating a vehicle simple enough for farmers to repair themselves, reliable enough for daily use on America's primitive roads, and most critically, affordable enough for ordinary workers to purchase. The Model T's design was revolutionary in its simplicity. Its high ground clearance allowed it to navigate rutted country roads. Its four-cylinder engine was powerful but easy to maintain, and its pioneering use of vanadium steel made it both lighter and stronger than competitors. But Ford's true breakthrough wasn't the car itself, it was how it would be built. In 1913, Ford and his team introduced the moving assembly line at the Highland Park plant. Inspired partly by Chicago meatpacking operations and grain conveyors, this innovation transformed manufacturing forever. Instead of workers moving to stationary vehicles, the chassis moved to the workers, with each person performing a single specialized task before the vehicle continued to the next station. The results were astonishing. Before the assembly line, a Model T took over 12 hours to assemble. Within months, that time dropped to 93 minutes. By 1914, Ford was producing 308,162 cars, more than all other American automakers combined. But the most revolutionary aspect of Ford's system was not mechanical, it was social. In January 1914, he announced the $5 workday, more than doubling the industry's standard wage. Critics called it socialism, and Ford called it good business. His reasoning was simple yet profound. Workers deserved to afford the products they made. The $5 day was not charity. It was creating customers while reducing the crippling turnover that had plagued his factories. What made this moment so revolutionary was that Ford had proven ordinary people deserved extraordinary things. The luxury of personal transportation, previously reserved for the wealthy, could now belong to the men and women who built the vehicles. For the first time, a complex consumer product would be made by its own customers. The transformation of American manufacturing did not arrive with fanfare or proclamation. There was no single moment when industry shifted. Instead, expectations transformed quietly across America as Ford's methods demonstrated unprecedented results. By 1916, a new Model T rolled off the assembly line every 24 seconds. The price had fallen from $850 in 1908 to $360, equivalent to about $8,500 today, placing it firmly within reach of middle-class families. Ford's Highland Park plant became a global pilgrimage site, with industrialists and engineers from around the world arriving daily to witness the revolution firsthand. Other automobile manufacturers faced an existential choice: adopt assembly line methods or face extinction. Companies like Oldsmobile and Cadillac, which had built their reputations on handcrafted luxury, reluctantly embraced mass production techniques. By 1920, the entire American automotive industry had reorganized around Ford's principles of standardization, specialization, and continuous flow. The impact extended far beyond how cars were built. It transformed who could own them. As prices fell and reliability improved, automobile ownership exploded among the middle class. In 1910, there was roughly one car for every 200 Americans. By 1920, that ratio had improved to one car for every 13 people. For the first time in history, industrial workers could afford a complex machine that dramatically improved their quality of life. That shift created what economists now recognize as a virtuous cycle. Workers earned higher wages producing affordable goods, which they then purchased, creating more demand and more jobs. The revolutionary concept that factory employees could afford factory products effectively created the American middle class as we understand it today. The entire ecosystem surrounding automobile production had to evolve to support Ford's unprecedented volume. Parts suppliers abandoned custom manufacturing for precision mass production. Dealers transitioned from selling luxury items to moving high-volume, low-margin products. Even America's infrastructure transformed, with paved roads expanding from 141,000 miles in 1910 to over 387,000 miles by 1920. By the early 1920s, Ford's mass production principles had spread far beyond automobiles. Appliance manufacturers adopted assembly line techniques to produce affordable refrigerators, washing machines, and vacuum cleaners. Furniture companies reorganized around standardized components and continuous production flow. Even clothing manufacturing shifted toward mass production methods. The social implications were equally profound. As consumer goods became more affordable, living standards rose across economic classes. Indoor plumbing, electrical appliances, and personal transportation, once luxuries for the elite, increasingly became expectations rather than aspirations for average Americans. Ford's philosophy that machines should serve humanity rather than the reverse had practical consequences for workers as well. The 40-hour workweek, which Ford adopted in 1926, eventually became the national standard. Employee benefits from healthcare to retirement plans emerged as companies competed for workers in this new industrial landscape. By 1927, when the 15 millionth Model T rolled off the assembly line, Ford's revolution was complete. Mass production had become not just a manufacturing technique, but the foundation of American prosperity. From a radical challenge to established practices, Ford's methods had become the new orthodoxy, the expected way that things were built, sold, and owned in industrial America. Today, Henry Ford's legacy survives through three distinct channels that continue to shape our world. The Ford Motor Company he founded, which remains a global automotive force. The Ford Foundation, which has invested billions of dollars in education, civil rights, and social justice. And most enduringly, the manufacturing philosophy known as Fordism that remains the foundation of modern production. The most visible embodiment of Ford's manufacturing vision was the Rouge plant in Dearborn, completed in 1928. Sprawling across 1,000 acres with over 100 miles of internal railways, the Rouge was not just a factory, it was an industrial ecosystem. Raw materials such as iron ore, coal, rubber, and sand entered one end, and completed vehicles emerged from the other. At its peak, 100,000 workers operated within this self-contained manufacturing city. The Rouge became the template for integrated manufacturing across industries. From electronics to aerospace, the principle that production should flow continuously from raw materials to finished products revolutionized how complex goods are made. Toyota's production system, often credited with transforming manufacturing in the late 20th century, built directly on Ford's foundations while adding innovations like just-in-time inventory and quality circles. Ford's labor philosophy, though sometimes contradictory in practice, created the modern employment contract. His insistence that workers deserve to afford the products they made established the concept of living wages. The 40-hour work week, which Ford implemented to maintain productivity while giving workers leisure time to enjoy and use their purchases, became the American standard. Even employer-provided healthcare traces its origins to Ford's sociological department, which monitored worker welfare to reduce absenteeism. The digital revolution might seem far removed from Ford's mechanical world, but his principles endure. Modern manufacturing combines Ford's standardization with unprecedented customization, producing millions of unique products on the same assembly lines. From iPhones to Tesla vehicles, today's most innovative products are built using methods that would be recognizable to Ford himself, albeit enhanced by robotics and artificial intelligence. Perhaps most significantly, Ford's vision that technology should serve ordinary people rather than just elites has become our cultural expectation. When we express outrage that the latest innovations are not immediately affordable to average consumers, we are channeling Ford's democratic vision of technology. Our assumption that technological progress should benefit everyone, not just the privileged few, is perhaps his most enduring legacy. From a farm workshop to global transformation, the story of Henry Ford demonstrates how a single individual's vision can reshape civilization. A machinist's son who believed machines should serve humanity proved that industrial democracy was not just possible, but inevitable, fundamentally reshaping how the world works, moves, and prospers. The Model T's production eventually ended, the assembly lines evolved, and even the mighty Rouge plant transformed over time. But Ford's core insight that ordinary people deserve extraordinary things continues to drive innovation, shape economies, and define our expectations of what technology should achieve. In that sense, we all still live in Henry Ford's world, moving forward on the roads he helped build, propelled by the democratic vision of a farm boy who refused to accept that luxury and exclusivity must always go hand in hand.